I think one of the challenges in sport associations, and perhaps associations writ large, is we focus so much on that community aspect that we forget there's another portion of what we do, which is to go out there and spread the word. Some associations are great at that, don't get me wrong. But a lot, I think we have a habit of doing what's in front of our face. Most associations are not overstaffed. Most associations, you wear 14 different hats, and that's only because the 15th, you didn't have time to get it printed. So you're trying to run the conferences next week. So the sort of idea of growth somewhat becomes challenging. And we've really made a conscious effort to go out there and spend time growing the presence of fencing, encouraging people into the front door of fencing.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Phil Andrews, CEO of USA Fencing. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Phil, tell us about USA Fencing.
It's interesting being on an association show, and probably a lot of people going, why are you talking to USA Fencing? What has the sport got to do with this? And you're right, it's very unlikely the Colorado Avalanche or the Edmonton Oilers are coming to be on an association show. But actually, in the Olympic world, the grand majority of us are member-based associations. Our boards are constituents elected by our members. Our legal name, for that matter, is not USA Fencing. That's a brand name. It's, in fact, the United States Fencing Association. We are an association of our members. And having run associations back in the UK, my native land, in my life, and much smaller associations, I might add, I see the similarities between membership associations, trade associations, and what we do here at USA Fencing, running that community. So to give people a very broad, brief overview, most people will know us for the Olympic Games. The rest of the time, we put on about 1,000 events a year across the United States, and we send 144 Team USAs around the world. So on one hand, our job is to prepare a team to go around the world and win some shiny little things, named medals for the United States of America. And that's a really beautiful thing. It becomes part of the public conscious, usually once every 4 years. Our team right now is at the World Championships in Hong Kong, China, and just won a medal last night. But the other side of what we do is running everything and all things fencing, except for white picket things and chain link things. We do the things that involve swords all around the country. So we promote fencing. We have clubs who are members. Those clubs have members who are fencers. We have divisions, which a lot of associations would call a chapter. So we have about 66 of those, most of which are a state, not all, as NAF would tell you, some are more than a state. And we have to service those members, and we need to grow the sport. And that's our job, is to be the centralized resource for all things fencing.
Phil, give us a sense of the scale. What ages are your members, and how many members do you have? And are they students? Do they necessarily have to compete, or they can just be members because they're in clubs? Give us a sense of the scale.
We have about 800 member clubs, so 800 sort of places you can go and fence that are USA Fencing sanctioned and member clubs. And then we have just over 50,000 active fencers across the country, and that's ranging from our sort of hub city in New York all the way to Iowa, North Dakota, and so on. Those fencers range from 6 to 86, quite literally. Kids who are trying it for the first time, to folks who are really seriously trying to go to the NCAA in college, to folks trying to make the Olympic Games, to folks who just do it because they're 22, they picked it up, college would just off, and they do it because it's fun, they do it once a week. and everything in between.
Phil, is the sport growing?
Yes, the short version is we are currently the fastest growing sport in the Olympic world.
Wow.
We've had double-digit growth for the last 4 years straight now. We are the largest participation sport for Asian Americans in the US at this point.
No.
So that's where we're really growing. It's interesting people don't think about this, but there's a lot of crossover with K culture, which has become a big thing. Before we came on, you and I exchanged some discussion about the drama 2125. That's actually helping.
25-21.
I apologize. That is exactly what's helping to grow us. K-pop Demon Hunters, Wednesday on Netflix. In fact, we became the first sport last week to go and do a panel at Comic-Con of all places. And it's partly because of that film crossover. Plus, we did really well in Paris. People are really starting to see fencing come into their conscious a little bit more. And part of the challenge is honestly just encouraging people to go and try it for the first time, because our sport does tend to talk to people who are not your average sport people. Our people tend to be a lot of time very similar to chess. The sport has a nickname of physical chess, and I think that's a really accurate one.
Wow. Well, we get a lot to talk about when it comes to fencing and USA Fencing, but I want to turn to your journey. So, Phil, how do you get to become CEO of USA Fencing? I checked you out on LinkedIn, and man, you got this great background.
I'm British, as the voice gives away. I started in music, went into sport, into professional ice hockey for a while, spent some time in universities, ended up at the University of East London, ran the London operations for Team USA at the London 2012 Olympic Games. And then I found out my market value, because basically most people in the UK who visit London, they come home with a little Big Ben. It's about $5. And so since I got brought home instead, I guess my market value is probably about $3. And then I came over here and I had the pleasure of working in weightlifting, in a wonderful sport, for 10 years. And then USA Fencing had some challenges. And 4 years ago, almost to the day, they called me and said, "Hey, would you come over here?" And it was a little bit of a longer conversation than that, but met with their board. And like in all of associations, that's who a CEO in our movement reports to. Our boards are slightly differently structured. We have athletes on those boards. We have usually elected constituents. That might be coaches or referees or club owners, people from the community. And then you have independents who are usually from outside of the sport. Met with them. We have a 12 voting member person board, and they said, this guy should run USA Fencing. So if you like what I've done and you're a fencer, call them and say thanks. If you don't, call another person's board. No, I'm kidding.
Well, Phil, let's turn to USA Fencing, because when you sent me an email to say, hey, can I be on your podcast? You said we're experiencing a lot of growth. So talk to us about this growth. Like, what does a lot of growth look like?
The sport of fencing, the industry of fencing, for whatever terminology, is growing. I think people are looking for partly the physical. I think that helps sport right now. And I think it helps associations who have physical events, particularly conferences, but we'll talk about community. I think fencing has become more in the psyche of particularly those bigger cities where we thrive, like in New York, like SFO, Los Angeles, and of course the next Olympics is in Los Angeles and Paralympic Games. You know, we've done a lot as well to lean into growth. I think one of the challenges in sport associations, and perhaps associations writ large, is we focus so much on that community aspect that we forget there's another portion of what we do, which is to go out there and spread the word. Some associations are great at that, don't get me wrong. But a lot, I think we have a habit of doing what's in front of our face. Most associations are not overstaffed. Most associations, you wear 14 different hats, and that's only because the 15th, you didn't have time to get it printed. So you're trying to run the conferences next week. So the sort of idea of growth somewhat becomes challenging. And we've really made a conscious effort to go out there and spend time growing the presence of fencing, encouraging people into the front door of fencing, finding media partners who, without spending money on advertising the sport or showcasing the sport, are able to get the term fencing and USA Fencing and the ability to go and try fencing into more people's minds. You're kindly being one of those people of having me on the podcast here for half an hour. And at the end of that, I'm hoping somebody goes, you know, I go past a fencing club at night. Maybe I should go and try that.
Well, let me ask you this question. So what have you been doing to get people like me or my son or my husband or a coworker to say, fencing, huh? I should check it out. So what are you doing in this area?
We've got a partner with NextShark, which is a big Asian American network, just announced that this morning. Chief Executive Group, CNBC, Tegna, iHeartMedia. Those are some of the bigger ones. But we've also done a lot on social media.
But what are you doing with them? Are you taking out ads?
It's a combination of earned media, paid media, which we're not paying for, and some in the way of putting fencing just on television. Also, we've leaned a lot into really making the right relationships in the media. I think in associations, relationships is everything. And that is no different when you're trying to get your association into the media. We have something that's exciting every 4 years, but let me tell you, it's really tough in the other four. We call it flame to flame. Yet, that's actually the core of our community. The core of our community is not Lee Kiefer. Lee Kiefer's a 3-time Olympic champion, an amazing human being. She's about to have her first child, and she's planning to come back and fence. She is remarkable, but she's not actually the heartbeat of what we do. It's the 50,000 fencers out there that are giving resources to different chapters around the country to go out there and market themselves. Doing the Fence Across America tour, where we're taking fencing out into communities. Just before this call, I was on with Philadelphia and getting 30th Street Station involved in promoting fencing next summer and the following summer also. So every little bit helps. And I think another piece of it for us is breaking barriers of what people think that fencing is and what in reality fencing is. So we are highly diverse, highly Asian American in particular. It's a sport that's easy to try. And like most associations, we don't have a giant budget.
Well, you said something kind of interesting. You said paid media, but we're not paying for it. But what does that mean?
We're doing exchanges. So, we have a lot of members. We know a lot about our members. We know the demographics of those members. We know which media outlets probably want to reach those members, and perhaps critically, which advertisers that fund those media outlets may want to reach those folks. In other words, who they want to be on their platform that they can onward sell to the people that they make money from. And we've done a lot of research into that to really understand who our people are and therefore be targeted in what we do, but also targeted in that media outreach. And so that's how we're ending up.
Hey, so you're an association, you're growing. You just completed a new strategic plan. So tell us about the strategic plan. What are you envisioning and what are you working on?
A couple of years in now, we'll be starting to think about writing our next one soon, this time next year. The strategic plan we're doing, I'm happy to say very well against, was about putting some rocket power behind USA fencing. When we came in here a few years ago, there was some challenges in the organization. Governance was certainly a big challenge. There was some issues at the board level, some issues in the bylaws, some issues around the committee side, some issues in our divisions, which is essentially things like state associations, chapters adjacent to that. We also had a very bad COVID. We're heavily reliant on our business model being around events. That was part of the strategic plan, is to move our reliance out of events into being a little bit more reliant on membership dues, being a little bit more reliant on our foundation and philanthropic fundraising, a little bit more reliant on service provision, a little bit more reliant on sponsorship and partnerships, really diversifying your income. And again, if you're an association executive director or CEO, you're probably going, yeah, I recognize those challenges. And, we had a lot of challenges about raising brand, about our close relationship with the collegiate system and making that closer. That's been really successful. Some around things that you wouldn't see in most associations, although you might in the advocacy side for some, which is around achievement on the field of play. Where are we going to go and win medals? Where are we going to send Team USA and come back with some shiny things? We are lucky enough to be, when I came in, to be one of the leading nations for fencing, particularly in foil. A long way to go in the Paralympic side. One of the goals, fund our Paralympic athletes for the first time ever. We've done that. Acceleration of technology, of what is happening now. How can we improve the experience of our members when they go onto usafencing.org and they're trying to get something done in their membership profile in their online system? The technology we're using is really good, but it was originally built for us 10 years ago. Now you go to some larger businesses and you have personalized AI-based experiences. When our national office is shut, how do people get information? Well, A lot of people will do fencing at tournaments and fencing things in their evening or weekends because they're working during the week or they're in college or school. That makes sense. Well, of course, we're shut then. So how can we use modern day technology in a safe and appropriate way to really enhance that experience for them and get them the answers that they need on a Saturday afternoon rather than having to wait till 9 a.m. on a Monday morning?
Right. I mean, these are all the things that associations are thinking about, but what are the top 2 or 3 things that are really keeping you up at night these days?
I think, you look at the growth side, we've talked about that enough. So that does keep me up because that growth needs to continue. We've seen historically in fencing, unfortunately, 1 or 2 governance issues. I came in part of those governance issues. I think that keeps a lot of executive directors up at night of, when you're an employee of an organization, you report to one person. That's actually, I'm not saying it's very easy for everybody, but it's easier because you've got to please one human. For executive directors, you report to 12.
Right, right.
So how do you keep every one of those people happy? How do you keep them informed?
And they change regularly.
Yes, every 2 years at minimum. And as a result, how do you keep them happy? How do you keep in a very diverse association or organization like ours, where we have 3 different disciplines plus the Paralympic side of the house, and there's a lot of different priorities for people? The needs of a 75-year-old veteran fencer are quite different to the mom of a 17-year-old who's really trying to get into college in that critical time. And the needs of a elite keeper whose goal is to win gold medal in the Olympic Games is very different to the fencer who found fencing for the first time this September when they went off to college and found a club that they really spoke to them. So I think it's a combination of how do you keep the governance on track? How do you keep the organization on track? How do I keep my staff happy, like most associations? We don't pay the earth. How do I keep these really hardworking, super talented people happy? All of those things that bother most executive directors.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you something about influencers or celebrities, because you have in your midst these celebrities, right? The fencing star from the Olympics, et cetera, or maybe the actor who is a great fencer and actually showed off some fencing chops, at a movie. How do you work with them? Do you pay them? Are they influencers for you?
We don't.
How do you work with them to help promote the sport? Is there a playbook here?
I think, I'm trying to relate this to associations. We're lucky in fencing. The way that we came across this was looking at what makes us unique. We're going to compete in Los Angeles 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and we're to compete against people. And you're thinking, yeah, we get it. USA competes against GB or against Canada or against Italy or against Hong Kong.
France, Korea, right?
Yeah, Korea, exactly. That's true. But we will also, on the business side of the house and on the association side of the house, we'll somewhat compete against our friends. USA track and field, USA swimming, USA gymnastics, USA judo. Because we all have that 2.5 week moment in the sun. And most of us only compete for a week and a bit. In fact, almost every sport is about half the games. So that's really your window of time. And you've got to, last time I literally went down as far as, okay, we have a good chance to medal on this day. Who else is medaling? Oh, Simone Biles, one of the very best athletes and most popular athletes of all time. Okay, we're probably not getting on the Today Show the next day. So what can we do to build relationships with ABC or CNN and get opportunities for our athletes and our sport and our association? So that's one portion of it. And I came across this going, all right, what makes us unique? And I was like, Mask of Zorro, Star Wars, Princess Bride. And to some extent these days, Wednesday, Cave Up Demon Hunters. And let's lean into that. And then I started to do a deep dive on how many people had held a blade, how many people were fencers themselves. So a few good examples. Probably the most surprising is Neil Diamond. He was a fencer. He captained the New York University team.
So how do you manage this? How do you keep track of it? And how do you take advantage of it?
You want the honest answer?
Yeah.
A lot of effort, a lot of conversation, a lot of asking people for favors, and Google Sheets.
Okay.
We're lucky we have something visual, but there's ways associations can look at the same thing. Who in my industry is the known person, or who has been involved in what I do that's got presence? That might be their LinkedIn voice, or it might be that they've got a presence on social media, or it might be that they used to work in what you do, and now they've gone into somewhere they've got profile. Another good example that relates to the business world, Andrew Ross Sorkin, who's a presenter on Squawk Box, former fencer. So massage those relationships. Associations are usually based on, and it comes down to it, even trade associations, somewhat based on passion,
Sure.
somewhat based on something you spend a lot of time on. Therefore, if you find that right person, we're lucky we've got quite a few who can step in and be passionate about that, opens door number one. Door number two and three usually open because of door number one. So it's okay. Who else should we talk to? Who's got who's adjacent to me? And I listen to your podcast with the gentleman, the FinTech Association. So, all right, who is a bank leader that's investing in fintech, was interested in fintech, or who's got a presence? So, I thought about this as you were asking me this question, and I have a friend and colleague who runs a marketing association who's got a very large following on LinkedIn, who happens to be a fintech investor.
Wow.
That's a perfect person for him to reach out to, with a large presence in likely his best group, which is probably LinkedIn voices for him. For us, it's probably YouTube or Instagram. LinkedIn's great for us, but it's a different audience. So I think those are some of the things that, for me, in associations, we all have essentially zero or very limited marketing budgets.
Right.
So you can't do what you would do if you're Coca-Cola or Pepsi or so-and-so and go and buy that coverage. You can't do it. You don't necessarily want to do it because you want to spend that money servicing your people. But at the same time, your responsibility is to grow the organization. So that means to market, any MBA will tell you, well, yeah, you got to spend on marketing in order to grow. How do you solve for that problem? And the answer is, how do you turn paid media into earned media? And that's the concept.
Phil, are you experimenting with membership models to make the tent bigger?
Yes. So we've just made our parent membership free.
Parent membership, as in if I have a kid who fences, my membership is free?
Yes, because we want you to be closer to the association, be part of that community, and feel like you're part of that community.
Ah.
That's now free. And so by the end of the year, we'll probably grow by about 30,000 members, but it's because of the parents. So we'll still be about 50,000 fences, maybe 55,000 because of the way we're growing, but we'll have a lot more members overall in the top line number because of that. But, we're looking at how, do we do a 2 or 3 year membership? Because as a parent, if you're looking at my kid's going to be doing this throughout high school, that might be a good opportunity to do a 2 or 3 year membership that just makes sense. When I was at weightlifting, we brought in monthly membership. We chose not to do that here, but it is something we've got on the back burner. We've looked at structures of association membership or associate membership versus full membership, and where do the line in the level of competition lie. I think, again, one of the things associations and NGBs often could do with is having a cadence of reviewing membership models. And frankly, we did that about 3 years ago. We brought together a group of our members. We brought together a group of people who have membership models outside of our organization, outside and interesting expertise in membership models. We had some people involved with financial heads on them. So we're making sure we're not giving away the house, but also we're providing the right value. And again, we've been lucky enough to have people from other associations go, yeah, I'll do that. And sometimes I've been called from in exchange almost to do that. And as a result, I'm always a yes. And I think that fresh pair of eyes and ears makes sense. So, one of the things that we're trying to get into a habit of, and we're not the best at it right now, but we're trying, is get into a cadence of reviewing things like that. We've just finished a review of our events model and how you qualify for events and how those events are run and how people are allocated to different areas of those events. Technology as well, playing a part in that. For a time, monthly membership was not really possible. And then recurring membership is now pretty common in a lot of associations.
Right.
We brought it in here in 22, just the auto renewals, for example. And a lot of associations obviously have auto renewals. Some still don't. Some of that is not because the association or the sport does not want to have it. It's because the technology doesn't exist.
Phil, for my clients that have lots of student members, their challenge is the churn with the students, because they graduate and they decide, I'm not going to be a member, or they're trying to keep track of them. They lose them. They use a student email address and then they lose them. What are you doing in this area to keep track of people? And how do you keep me interested in fencing past college or past high school?
We have some of the same problems, particularly the latter bit of students who graduate and then they go into a career, life gets busy, and we don't do a good enough job of keeping track of them. We just did our first alumni event
Mm.
in New York City at New York Athletic Club, and it was wild. We had people who hadn't seen each other in over decades
Aw.
coming in and giving people massive hugs. And we deliberately didn't have like a wildly intricate agenda because honestly, we know how many people are going to show up. We know how many people are RSVP'd, but we know how many people are actually going to show and how the reaction would be. And sure enough, we did it pretty well. So I think the tips that I've learned, and we're not world class, we had to do a big, challenging exercise in finding those people. So we actually partnered with a couple of data companies, Deloitte and Dentsu, actually, who lent in and helped us find people who'd fenced in college, either in club or in varsity. And I think most associations could probably do a similar data dive. The technology's out there
Wow.
to do that now and find those alumni where they are today, who they are, their new email address. There's also something called an append that you can do, a data append. And there's businesses out there that can look at, particularly where you have a fairly unique name, in all honesty, but they can look at your data points and basically identify where you've gone. One of the challenges that youth organizations have is sometimes it's that you have the parents' email address, not even theirs.
Right.
So that's another one that we had to overcome. So I think, if you haven't been keeping track of the alumni, then the job is, okay, normally I want to get to people who have been 20, 30, 40 years into the profession or into the association, or whatever it is. You probably are going to lose people as they go through life changes. People have kids, people change jobs, people graduate college. First of all, ask them before they leave, what's your personal email? That's the biggest one. And that's what we need to keep track of people as they leave college and move into their professional lives, even in fencing. So that's point number one. Let's address the process flaw, for want of a better terminology, that we've got in that now. And that CRM system needs to have that. That data needs to be kept safely. But you could also go out there and use some of the expertise out there in the world. Sometimes in your own association, you can find those expertise, or people who know those expertise who can go and look at finding people who've moved, who were members of the association once, and finding people who, in our case, fenced in college. And we won't find everybody, but we've found literally in the tens of thousands of people across the country in our case. And for the grand majority of people, they're still interested in X. If you joined an association, particularly as a student, you were probably interested in X at that time. And you're probably still somewhat interested in X. You're particularly interested, I found, when someone reaches out and says, hello, I'm from the X association. We know that you were a member 12 years ago when you were at the University of Michigan. Would you be interested in an alumni event or whatever program you're doing to bring people back in, or our Michigan chapter? We see you now live in Detroit. Our Detroit chapter's having an alumni event on so-and-so day. Would you come? Put on a little bit of beer and wine or nibbles, a little bit of food, have a room, and magic happens. Because what happens is so-and-so comes in and another so-and-so comes in. Either they also lost touch with each other because they both went to Michigan. One person lives in Detroit, the other one lives in Grand Rapids, whatever it might be. Or simply there's just community again of we both did this thing in college and now we're in a room in Detroit talking about that thing. And it was just that first evening. We're about to do another one in September. That first evening was magical. It really was. And we had people who were in their 80s. We had some people actually were still college students and everything in between. It was a remarkable night. When you run an association, there's definitely days you go home in the evening, you go, oh, that was a rough day. In most associations, you work in something that you care about. That's why you are an executive director of an association, or you manage an association, or you're on the board of an association. You care about it. And that was one of the nights I went home and was like, that was a good night. That was great. That was why we show up and do this.
Phil, it is 2026. Why should someone like me, or my son, or my husband, or my neighbor explore fencing? Check it out for the first time. I've never fenced. I've done some stuff. I've done martial arts, but never fenced.
Well, try it. Just go to tryfencing.org. It will ask for your zip code. It will give you a local club closest to you. Walk in the front door. For the kids, there's an added bit of, again, as a sport that often speaks to people where other sports don't. It's a sport that speaks to a lot of the time people who are in drama, music, robotics, STEM programs. It's a very functional sport. So engineers, lawyers, finance people tend to be attracted particularly into MBA. Just go and give it a go. And it's okay if you come out the other side and go, not for me, but go and give it a go.
Well, Phil, we will put a link to your website, to tryfencing.org, and to one of my favorite shows, 2521. It's a Korean drama about a high school student who's trying to become a fencer on the world stage. I highly recommend it. Phil, thank you for being on the show. We'll have to have you back.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends.